Questioner is Daniel Baum. He is a college student. Daniel.
Hey, Daniel.
Hi. How do you plan on enacting all of the legislative goals you propose without immense congressional involvement and support? In other words, are you solely relying on executive actions to push your legislative agenda?
No, I couldn't be doing that. That's unconstitutional and it can't happen. This is what I do believe. I believe, for example, and I look at you as a young man, that I want to see public colleges and universities tuition-free. I want to create millions of jobs rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. I want to guarantee health care to all people. I want to make sure that women have pay equity on the job. And I want to do a lot of other things. So I will answer your question in two ways. First of all, I have worked with Republicans where there has been common ground for many, many years. A couple of years ago, I was the chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. I'm working with people like John McCain, Jeff Miller over in the House. He was chairman in the House Republican. We put together the most comprehensive veterans health care bill in the modern history of America. Okay, so number one, I can work with Republicans. But here is the second point, and I'm the only candidate who will tell you this, that at the end of the day, you've got a Congress today where too many members are worried about securing large campaign contributions from very, very wealthy people. In fact, one of the differences between Secretary Clinton and I, she has a super PAC, collected a whole lot of money from Wall Street. I've got 5 million individual contributions averaging $27 apiece. Now, I say that not to brag. Well, I'm bragging, but you know, that what goes on in Washington now is Congress is not listening to you, Congress is not listening to the people in this room and the needs of ordinary people. Congress is listening to Wall Street, to multinational corporations, to large campaign contributors. And what I have said throughout this campaign, and I repeat tonight, no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone. So to fundamentally answer your question, what we need are millions of people, many of whom have given up on the political process in disgust, many young people who have not been involved in the political process. We need them to come together and demand that we have a government in this country that represents all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors.
But thank you, Daniel. To follow up on Daniel, I mean, you have some bold prescriptions for the country.
Yes.
And you're dealing with, right now, a Republican Congress. So how do you convince that Republican Congress to do exactly opposite of what they believe?
In two ways. For a start, if I become president, it will mean that there will be a massive voter turnout. And that's what we're seeing just the other day in Maine, where I got 64% of the vote in the caucus, broke their caucus record for turnout. In Kansas, broke their caucus record. If I win, it will mean that young people and working class people are coming out in large numbers. If that happens, the Republicans will not continue to control the United States Senate. They'll have a lot less seats in the House. But here is the point. If the American people begin to stand up and fight for their rights, for example, there's overwhelming support in this country, Brett, to raise the minimum wage. Republicans don't want to do it. But if Republicans look out and millions of people are engaged and say, you know what, you are going to raise the minimum wage or you're going to learn what unemployment is. You know what will happen? Minimum wage will go up. If women become mobilized and say, sorry, we are tired of working for 79 cents on the dollar compared to men, you better vote for pay equity, it will change. So my point is, change in this country, whether it is the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the gay movement, whatever it is, workers' rights movement, always comes from the bottom on up. And that's what this campaign is about, mobilizing millions of people to demand that Congress listen to them. Change happens then.
Who's your favorite Republican?
I'll tell you something funny. I won't tell you. I have favorite Republicans, people I work with. If I tell you that person, it will be a disservice to that person.
I want to keep this answer. Vice President of Donor Relations for the United Way locally.
Oh, I love the United Way. Hi.
Hi. Welcome to Detroit.
Thank you.
Clinton. We're really glad you're here. My question surrounds How do you anticipate getting anything done in Washington when compromise is a bad word?
You know, this is one of the most important questions for everybody in Washington, not just the next president. I will tell you what I have done and what I intend to do. When I was First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, I worked closely with Republicans, some of the most partisan Republicans. You know, after we failed to get health care done back in '93, '94, I turned around and started working with Democrats and Republicans to pass the Children's Health Insurance Plan, which has 8 million kids insured. I also worked, because I care deeply about foster care and adoption, with one of the most partisan Republicans then in the Congress, Tom DeLay. But he cared about foster kids. I knew that. I called him up. I said, Congressman, would you work with me to reform the adoption and foster care system? He said, what do you want to do? I said, come to the White House. Let's have a meeting. We were able to find common ground on that issue. When I got to the Senate, I started working with people who had been some of the biggest critics and opponents of my husband's presidency. And we found common ground. I worked with, I think, nearly all, if not all, of the Republicans that I served with. And when I became Secretary of State, I did the same. Now, I'm not saying this is easy, but as my good friend Debbie Dingell knows, you have to work at it every single day. You have to get up, you have to try to find the relationships, you have to build on it, you have to find common ground. And that is what I will do. Now, the other thing I will say, which is a little bit kind of funny, is when I'm not running for something, the Republicans say really nice things about me, and I have like a whole archive of those comments, because I did work with them, and I will work with them. I'll go anywhere to meet with anyone, anytime, to find common ground. I will also stand my ground, because I will disagree with some of the things that they want to do. But I think your point is so important. Our founders created a system where they made clear no human being has all the answers. You have to work together. They had some really intense disagreements, but they kept working until they could come to some compromise. Compromise is not a dirty word. It is the way democracy has to work, and that's what I will do.
Thank you, Douglas, for the question. I asked this Secretary Clinton to Senator Sanders. Who is your favorite Republican? You know, I've worked with so many of them, and the women in the Senate became good friends, both Democrats and Republicans, and we worked on a lot of issues. Susan Collins from Maine, for example. But I also worked with John McCain. He and I joined together to raise money for the rehabilitation hospital in San Antonio for returning veterans. And we also joined with others to work on some important issues. So I have good relations with a lot of Republicans. I hesitate to mention any more names. It will probably hurt them, and I do want to work with them. That's what Senator Sanders said. Let's go to Alton James. He is a recruiter for Wayne State University.